Hi, so I'm gonna make another one of the essay reading types of videos. This essay hasn't actually been marked because I finished college. It's basically a sample question from, or I think it's a past paper question from uh, the Oxford University admissions test. So I just thought I'd have a go at answering it and see how it goes. So I'm just gonna read through what I've written. I don't know how good it is because obviously I haven't had it marked and I don't know the specification, so I don't know exactly what the question was asking, but it is quite an open question, so I've given an open answer, and I did go down a specific route and yeah, explored some other avenues as well. So I'll just read through it and maybe post it on YouTube, maybe not. I don't know because I don't know how good it is, so I don't want to obviously say that this is a model essay that you should copy off or you should be inspired by, because I'm not sure about the quality of the content. But anyway, I'll just read through it. So the question is the future open in any sense in which the past is not? So this question sort of baffled me the first time I saw it. I was like, okay, well, I had to read it about 5 times over just to actually understand what it meant, and then I had to actually start thinking and discussing ideas with myself about what exactly I could write about. So then I after some thinking, and I did a little bit of planning at first and thought about some places I could take it. Then I actually decided to just write up the whole essay the other night, and I didn't time it, but usually I write around 4.5 sides on an essay, so that's pretty much what I've written. So yeah, I'll just read through it. So, is the future open in any sense in which the past is not? So at first look, we may feel inclined to answer this question with a yes, because the future has yet to occur. But if we dismantle our axioms and question our initial premises, then we could certainly make a case for the future not being open in any sense in which the past is not. Um, okay, I'm gonna drop my phone. That's food on my top, by the way. Yeah, just ignore that. First, we will question the definition of the word open in this context. We could mean subject to change. We can't physically change the past, but we can change our perspectives on the past. Because we never truly experience the noumenal, objective world, we should not assume that the past is just a series of material events. There is a subjective overlay. We have feelings and judgments of the past. These feelings and judgments are transient, meaning we could potentially alter them. Is there really much difference between changing our perspective on the past and changing the past itself? If not, then the past is no less open than the future. However, we could argue that the future has yet to occur, so it is more open in the sense of material possibilities. The material state of affairs of the past, based off of current scientific knowledge, is immutable. The future, as we understand it, is not like this. The material possibilities are much more broad than the unchanging nature of the past. The sets of all possible worlds have yet to manifest, making the future open with potential, unlike the past, which has already occurred, meaning in the material sense, the past is in fact very closed. To refute this argument, we could question the validity of the premises. I don't know how to say that. I think it's premises. So, to refute this argument, we could question the validity of the premises, and do so by using the ideas of 5th century scholastic Boethius. Boethius questioned ideas about time and speculated as to how God perceived time and space. He described God as eternal, meaning he had the simultaneous possession of boundless life. God sees a form of eternal present. All of time has already been predetermined, and it is only from the confines of our finite phenomenological perspectives that we see time as past, present, and future. We could argue that this view is coherent with modern science. Einstein posed the idea that time is movement. If so, then because we are moving creatures, we also exist in time and cannot experience time without a body. So it could be the case. I was going to link to Anselm's fourth dimensionalist approach there, but I actually forgot. But we could have... So it could be the case that time is already laid out, but we have no way of knowing and communicating that, because as long as we have a body, we are in time. If time was somehow predetermined in an incomprehensible way, then perhaps the future is not open in any sense in which the past is not. On the contrary, Boethius does make the claim that we do have free will. This implies that our actions are meaningful and have some impact upon possible future worlds. This suggests that the future is open in ways in which the past is not. By means of the butterfly effect, our choices and decisions alter the future. Perhaps God sees all possible worlds with both conditional and simple necessities. God sees the sun shining as a result of its nature. There could be possible worlds in which there is no sun, but realistically there would be no conscious human there to observe or question it. So, is that really a practical possible world? God sees the man walking as a result of choosing to do so with his free will. We could argue that there are multiple potential future worlds, but only one manifests in the present, and one exits and one exits into the past. In this sense, the future is open in ways in which the past is not. We shouldn't forget, however, that the past is open to interpretation in a perhaps more intense way than the future. This is because the past has already been actualized at one point, meaning we have lived through the parts in which we were present. Even the parts of history in which we were not present still hold an interest to us. This is shown in the popularity of subjects such as history, biology, and archaeology. We are interested as to what has happened in the past, meaning we don't fully understand it. We are still trying to work it out by means of fact gathering and interpretation. We can attempt to predict the future, but we don't have the empirical remnants of its existence. We could argue that this makes the future more open or more closed, depending on our perspective. Overall, it seems fair to say that the future is open in any sense in which the past is not. The future is not open. No, the future is open because it is essentially potential, not material or actual. It seems logical to conclude that there are more potential, perhaps infinite, worlds than there are actual. So in this sense, the future is open in ways in which the past is not. According to Occam's razor, the simplest explanation is the best. It seems much more complicated to argue, without concrete evidence, that time has already been predetermined by some intelligent being. It would make more sense to say, from our phenomenological perspectives, that time is somehow linear and constantly actualizing the next viable set of possibilities. However, we can't know for certain. Okay, so that's what I wrote. I think it's an okay essay, actually, reading it back. I think I laid out my arguments adequately. I'm not sure it will be a star. Say if it was out of 40, I think maybe 34, so maybe a high A or B. I mean, a high A or moving up into A stars, but yeah. I don't know. I don't really know what you could take from this video other than listening to what I have to say. Maybe you could learn a few things. I'm not sure I got the bit on Einstein right. I said something about Einstein saying that time is movement, but I'm not actually sure if that was him. I know he did pose the theory of relativity, which was, it seemed to be about movement and about time. And I remember hearing an example about it, or seeing an example, I can't remember exactly, about these two objects in space with nothing else around them. Both the objects are moving away from each other at different speeds, but from your perspective, you might perceive your object as standing still as the other object moves away at a greater speed, whereas in fact it's actually that both objects are moving away from each other and you can't actually determine the speed of both objects. But I don't know if that's necessarily linked to this, but I guess it could be in some ways because it's about time and about space and about, I guess, understanding the nature of reality, and this question does seem to raise questions about the past and the future, and it makes us think about things on a deeper level. And I think one of the links I did make, which was a link that I'd actually learned at A-level, was a subject I learned at A-level in philosophy, was Boethius, which I sort of gave a brief explanation of his view in this video, in the essay I mean. and I think he was a useful scholar to use because he was he did speculate a lot about time and space and how time and space actually is in the noumenal as opposed to the way in which we perceive time and space. So if in fact time and space is already laid out in some way that we can't actually understand, then that made me maybe think that that the future isn't necessarily open to change. It isn't determined by our decisions because it's already happened. But then, obviously, Boethius' ideas about free will makes his idea maybe a little bit more contentious. However, you could argue that God knows what decisions we're going to make before we make them, because God is God. God's omnipotent and omniscient, so he knows everything. But I think you could probably focus a lot more on that side of the discussion. So, well, is Boethius right to think that? And yeah, I don't know. I guess you could question, is it possible for God to do the logically impossible? People like Descartes would say, yes, it is, because God's God. Aquinas would say, no, God can't do that which is logically impossible because it doesn't make any sense to be able to do that. So yeah. So could God know the future? Is it logically impossible to know the future? I don't know. And they're all different avenues. I guess I could have explored, but I feel like I've maintained good question focus throughout the essay. And if you're doing A-level philosophy or any subject really, it's really important that you keep good question focus. Link back to the question all the time. As you might have noticed, I quoted the question a lot throughout this essay, and I actually started doing that a lot towards the end of my philosophy course. So I wrote a lot of practice essays up until my final exams, and I found that really helpful, and I think it paid off. So yeah, just quote the question. That's probably one of the biggest pieces of advice I could give you. And if you're not going to quote the question, at least read the question throughout and at the end of every paragraph to make sure that what you're writing is actually a relevant answer to the question. You're not just going off on too many tangents, because you won't get marks for that. You'll lose marks, and obviously if you lose marks, then you're not going to do so well. And it's not necessarily that you'll lose marks, because you don't start off with 40 marks and then work backwards losing marks as you make mistakes as you go on. You just won't get marks for it, and obviously you want to be gaining as many marks as possible, so link to the question, that is important. Okay, that's all I want to say in this video. So it's basically just an essay reading and then a couple of essay writing tips at the end, and maybe some ways in which we could make this essay better. But yeah, if you've enjoyed, then leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and thank you for watching!